Welcome into Film Tank, the weekly podcast that covers both new and classic cinema. On this episode of Film Tank, we discuss the remake of the film Pet Sematary based on the original text by Stephen King. If you would like to get in touch with Film Tank, you can always email us at filmtankshow@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Film Tank Show. And you can listen to all of our episodes on our website, filmtankshow.com, or on iTunes. And now, here are your hosts, Nick Cheney, Toussaint Egan, and myself, Alex Diekman. Hey there, everybody. Welcome in to episode 188 of Film Tank. As always, Alex Diekman, along here with Nick Cheney.
Hey.
And Toussaint Egan.
Hey.
We're back from the dead.
Oh my God, the ground is sour.
See, that was better than any part of that film, but that's okay. We're going to get into it.
Yeah.
So, on this episode, we are discussing the new-ish release of the film Pet Sematary, which is a remake of a film from the 80s.
That's an adaptation of...
It's an adaptation of a Stephen King novel.
Wow, they just don't know how to just leave well enough alone. It's almost as if dead is better.
It's a good look on Nick's face right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll get into
The Pet
that
Cemetery.
part of it.
Oh, yeah.
But first, giving just an idea of who made this film and what it's about, if you out there have not seen it, this film is directed by co-directors who have worked together in the past, which is Kevin Koch and Dennis Widmeyer.
What have they worked on?
Their most well-known film, it looks like, is the film Mama.
Oh, I didn't see that.
I'm sorry, Mama.
Well, I'm looking forward to Ma.
I never
Yeah.
met you.
Well, actually, hold on a second, because I'm...
Never meant to make
It
you
says
cry
that they're the...
tonight.
Oh, Mama 2. They didn't even direct the original one. This is the upcoming sequel
Oh.
that may or may not be
I was
coming
going to say,
out.
I checked their credits and I did not see anything.
No, it's a lot of very under the radar titles.
So the question is, how exactly did they come to helm a Stephen King adaptation, a high-profile Stephen King adaptation? Or were they just like directors for hire? It was like, hey, well, we're going to spin the roulette wheel and we're going to see. It's like, okay, this random dude, you go at it. I want it done in like 8 months, no reshoots, give me my shit right now.
Yeah, my guess is they were cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a high-profile thing, you know. They just wanted to cut their teeth, and, you know, like, God bless them. Like, that's okay. Yeah, it happens. You know.
Yeah. This had a budget of $21 million, which it doubled in the first weekend. So
Oh, well, okay. Well,
the studio will probably look at it as a success.
yeah, they'll get more work.
I
It's
mean,
good
to
for them.
be fair, it's that I would say that's a success for a property that I would assume most teen demographics don't care about these days.
No.
Because that's who people want.
Teens don't
It's
read.
rated R, too.
Yeah,
so
don't read
it's-
Stephen King.
So,
You know.
anyway.
But I'm not the librarian here, so I wouldn't know what teens read. So.
At the same time, I don't think this was ever thought of as being as successful as something like it was, even
No,
though...
I definitely think that maybe in production they were trying for that, but I do think along the way they figured that this was going to be a lot more minor.
Hence the early April release.
But it still sort of exists in this. I think the reason why this was greenlit in the first place was, like, one, it's a Stephen King property. He's, like, one of the most, if not the most well-known American horror writer alive
and
today. And it's,
after the success of it, too,
Yeah.
it just probably pushed
Oh,
this kind
Stephen
of stuff in
King's having a
overdrive.
moment right
Yeah.
now.
Oh, yeah, it's-
a resurgence moment.
a resurgence moment, because there's this whole, like, 80s, 90s, like, throwback sort of milieu. And like, Stranger Things really is a huge part of that, even though people forget about Super 8, which precedes that in a lot of ways. I think is better as a concept than Stranger Things. But it's definitely, like, coming back to, like, the actual, like, source of, like, those kind of works that spawn this entire movement.
Yeah, and I mean, even right now, like one of Hulu's most celebrated shows is Castle Rock.
Yeah.
Which is not a Stephen King production so much as it's a large budget, large scale Stephen King fanfic TV show where all of his properties and creations are existing in the same universe, with somebody else as a showrunner playing with them, and actually to decent effect because I've watched a few episodes.
Did you ever watch?
I'm really sorry.
Whoa.
I'm really
Boys.
sorry. Yeah,
Boys,
but
come on.
I've never seen an episode of Castle Rock, but I
Yes.
saw a story about it earlier today, which I'm guessing will bring a big old smile to your face, Nick.
About
That Garrett Hedlund is being removed from the show in the second season, and he's being replaced by Paul Sparks.
oh,
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That does bring a smile to my face.
What I want.
I mean, I actually kind of like Garrett Hedlund, but if you're going to replace him, then please with Paul Sparks.
Please, you're just please, Paul Sparks. Please.
Garrett Hedlund is the guy who was he like the lead for Tron Legacy?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, he's yeah.
in that, but he's also been in like a lot of random good things, like Inside Llewyn Davis, and what was he just in?
Pan.
No.
He was just in Triple Frontier.
Yeah, Triple Frontier. I don't know. I think he's underrated. I'm not saying
He's been in some good stuff.
he's replaceable. Clearly.
Oh yeah.
Speaking
That's funny.
of Stephen King television adaptations, did you ever watch Kingdom Hospital?
When I was younger, I did.
I liked that show.
Did you?
I remember watching a couple episodes, and I remember like watching it all the way through.
Now,
and,
you
like,
do know what that is, right?
I don't know what that is.
Kingdom Hospital is technically Stephen King remaking Lars von Trier's The Kingdom, which was a Swedish horror series that was on Swedish television in the 1990s.
I did not know
But
that.
most people don't realize that that's where, considering Stephen King is usually his own idea man.
Right.
But no, that is, and if you like that, you should watch the Lars von Trier miniseries called The Kingdom. I have the DVDs.
Well, yeah, I'll check that out. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I still have to watch The Prisoner. I'm trying to work my way through that. I'm sorry. I'm working on it. It's good. It's really good. Okay. Anyway, continue.
Okay. So, this version of Pet Sematary, which basically I think the other one and the original novel, centers around Dr. Lewis Creed and his wife Rachel as they relocate from Boston to rural Maine with their 2 younger children. The couple soon discover a mysterious burial ground hidden deep in the woods near their new home. So this film stars Jason Clarke as Lewis. What was that?
He's boring.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. It's all right. That's okay.
Claws are coming out. Down, church.
Also, Amy Seimetz as Rachel. And you will have potentially seen her previously in the film, the second film by
Shane
Carruth, Upstream Color. But also, she's probably somewhat more well-known for Alien Covenant, which is how she actually got this role, apparently.
Mainstream-wise, yes.
Yeah.
But also, just to her credit as to how she is in this industry, she is one of the co-directors of the show currently airing on Starz, The Girlfriend Experience.
Oh!
And she's doing some amazing directorial work.
Wonderful.
And she's got Steven Soderbergh's seal of approval because he's an executive producer on that show since they were adapting his property. So,
Wow.
obviously, anybody in the school of Soderbergh as an actor or director, which she's doing both, is a big A+ in my book.
I was going to say, in the Nick Cheney book, it's
That's
at least
right.
high marks.
Yeah.
And the other major player here is John Lithgow, playing the character of Judd, the next-door neighbor who, unfortunately, leads to all of the bad things for the most part.
No, he was like, don't do it.
Such an idiot.
Literally saying, you know what, why don't we just keep going? After he's already literally laying the groundwork to bury the cat right there now.
I will say this version does one good little detail, which is in this one, Lewis puts him to sleep to go do the second one. Because I feel like I believe in the other one, it's kind of like him just saying, you're not going to do that, right? And he's like, no. Okay, good night. So this is a little better in that respect.
Yeah.
Although one thing I also did find interesting about Judd's character is he was super mysterious, specifically early in the film here, which I guess depending on how you've seen it, and we'll talk about this too, I've never seen the original film, never read the novel. But he gives off this really alternative motive vibe, which I think probably could have been expanded on a little more. But the fact that...
Or gotten rid of. Because
how you're looking at it, okay.
Well, I'm just saying, in the other version, it makes a lot more sense that Judd is actually just a good neighbor, and
like a good neighbor. Pet Sematary's there.
Yeah, like only for like a few seconds should he be creepy because he's just this old guy who's coming over to say hello and warn about the trucks or whatever. Yeah. But like there's like a whole scene in I believe in the novel too, where Lewis goes over there to have a beer before any of the like shit hits the fan, and they talk about their fathers and whatnot.
I will say before we get into it, one thing I did actually quite enjoy, and just to go against for what you're saying, is I did like the idea of him being the one who finds Church the cat and having it being a little bit mysterious as to how that all kind of happened. And he's like, look, I found him. He's dead. It's just like, okay. Mm-hmm. I like that. I could understand where you could be like, well, that was
stupid.
Stupid.
That's fine. I mean, I don't mean that's fine. Like, that's your... I mean, like, I'm okay with that.
Oh, okay.
Just some of the posturing of, like the hulking over, like, oh, he looks like a scary old man. That's scary old man. That sounds like Gary Oldman. I just feel like some of that could have just been tossed just to make a more humanistic approach. Because I think ultimately that's what Pet Sematary is.
Seems like they had a tough time making that hour and 40-minute runtime.
Oh, absolutely. So, anyway, I'm not going to go off on a tangent. But
Quite yet.
Yeah.
So, before we get into our opinions on this, our former co-host Kenny was hoping to join us. And unfortunately, he was not able to make it for the
Rest in
recording
peace,
of this
Kenny.
episode.
We'll bury you in the Pet Cemetery.
Ouch. Wow.
First of all, you don't bury him in the pet cemetery.
Apparently you do.
I mean, do you not want him to come back?
Oh, I want him to come back.
Well, then you got to go bury him in the Indian burial ground.
Oh, that is true.
Yeah. That's actually one of the funniest things I think for anyone who's a first-time either reader or watcher of any version is like that there are two fucking cemeteries in a movie and book where the cemetery, like the actual pet cemetery, is so fucking incidental to the basically to the entire plot. I think thematically it makes sense.
Because the fact that it's named Pet Cemetery would make you think that the entire territory of that, at least beyond like both the beginning part and the beyond part, are all the Pet Cemetery, quote unquote.
That's part of the magical
but you're
experience.
not gonna have a Stephen King novel named Indian Burial Ground.
Right.
Not even him when he's like on cocaine and like during the 80s and shit and just totally like spiraling out of control.
Yeah, if you want to see some really awful acting, watch the original movie because at what's his name's Gage's funeral, he plays the priest that's presiding over the funeral.
Oh no,
he's got those big old glasses. And anyway, but yeah, no, for me, Pet Sematary, the location in the context of this story is kind of like
incidental.
Well, I was gonna say it's kind of like. Frankenstein is the name of the scientist. You know, like it's been so warped as to what people think about when they think about this story. That it's actually not what it is.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
The Wendigo Lands.
Yeah. Oh, God.
So, I think Kenny might have a different take on this than the three of us.
Yes.
So I will. I'll just read word for word what he sent to me about this and his overall thoughts. Overall, I quite enjoyed Pet Sematary. As a story, I've always enjoyed the story. Very well put. I was very excited to see what a modern take on the Stephen King classic would turn out to be. I believe it was beautifully shot. Interesting start. It built great suspense and played on the horrific emotions evoked from the original version. Staying true to its origins, it still managed to take turns setting itself apart from the first time around without getting too far off point. Until the end. More on that in a second. Mm-hmm. Okay. I view remakes of films similar to how I judge remakes of songs. If you're going to remake it, you might as well put your own spin on it. It doesn't need to be recognizable, but you don't want to waste everyone's time with a carbon copy. So I liked how there were some decisions to veer away from the original known story this time around. However, ultimately, the powerful message delivered by Stephen King regarding the parents grieving over the death of their children felt undermined by a decision to ultimately kill the entire family this time around. It's not the worst idea ever put to film, however, it just didn't seem to be as impactful to me as when it was originally told. It also felt at times as though not enough time was spent developing the backstory of these characters. Sure, I know the story, but as a first-time viewer of any version of the story, it seems like it would be a bit of a stretch in some moments that could be a little hard to believe that some of the conversations were happening or decisions being made by certain characters. This is in all caps now, by the way. You mean to tell me that Lewis and Rachel waited to get married and have 2 children before discussing religious beliefs and what happens after death?
Absolutely. Yes. Go in, Kenny.
Well,
No.
I'm not going to say anything now.
Yeah.
But I've got some thoughts about that.
Okay. And then,
That's present in all 3 versions.
Yeah.
To be fair.
But anyways, after his rant here in all caps, there's nothing. It just says,
Yeah, all right.
So overall, I will let these small aspects slide as I really enjoyed the story and the nostalgia strongly. Happy to see a strong and respectable remake of a beloved film. Beloved. I would fall somewhere around a 3.5 out of 5.
Can I say something in Kenny's to Kenny's credit too before we maybe go through that? But one thing I do want to point out, out of the 4 of us, meaning the 3 of us here and Kenny's, Kenny is the one who has had a child in the last
This is true.
couple of years, whereas the other 3 of us
Have not.
Have not.
Which is funny because he mentioned, because me and Kenny actually saw the film together, and he talked about how he was oddly relieved when he found out that the story was changed, that it was the girl instead of the son.
I mean, that's so...
Kenny has a little boy at home.
Yep.
So he was saying, it's just that much easier to step away from the story because it being a son, gets...
My boy!
I was going to say, yeah. So I just want to put that out there in the sense that, like, us 3 do not have that... connection as to...
I do have 2 cats at home, though.
That's not the same, though. You have, could you fold them into one cat, and then that cat would die, and then you bury it in the pet cemetery, and they come back?
Well, yeah, what do you think you're going to bury in the pet cemetery? A human? No, a cat.
Anyways.
Yeah.
Just trying to bring it back around to talk about Church the Cat, but that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. Let's talk about Church the Cat a little bit.
I saw a great tweet really quick by A.A. Dowd who said that...
I'm sure he loved this movie.
I think he actually didn't hate it, but...
Really?
Yeah, but he made a good...
He likes to shit all over everything, usually.
So do I. But he said that that the character motivation for resurrecting Church the Cat makes complete sense, even if any future resurrection doesn't, because it is just like a cat to one day be peaceful and then the next day be an asshole, so nobody would ever be the wiser. And I was like, yeah, you know what, that actually is kind of a cat-like thing.
Yeah.
So, it made me chuckle.
During the scene where Ellie went to Judd's house and introduces the cat, and it's like, that's my cat, Church. He's named after Winston Churchill.
Yeah.
I was like, he's a guy who lived a long time ago. And then, in the theater, I was with my friend, I was like, he was also a racist. I was like, yeah.
Well,
the best part of
I was
that
going to
scene
say,
is
technically, it was included for a reason.
Yeah.
And I was, literally in my head going, fuck you, Alex, fuck you, Alex, fuck you, Alex. Because that is one that before, I won't even say it, but before you say it, I will, yes, of course, that was one of those things that you like that was intentional.
Yeah, it was intentionally put in to reference another character played by that actor.
Because he plays Winston Churchill in The Crown on Netflix currently.
Oh, really?
There's no way that was
and
not
she
put in
asks
there.
him, do you know who Winston Churchill? Yes, I know who Winston Churchill is.
Oh, wow,
So,
great.
anyway.
I enjoyed that.
I know you. I'm sure you did.
I know you hate admitting when stuff like that exists. I love it.
It was so funny because when that happened,
It's all
I'm
in
like,
the same
I don't even-
universe.
It's like now it's like I don't even hate moments like this. I just hate the fact that Alex will watch moments like this and feel validated as a human being and has
As a film goer.
It's better than the house one, so that's fine.
that is yeah.
That's probably the worst. Yeah. So, opening remarks on this film. I was actually looking forward to this because this is the kind of horror that I usually gravitate towards in terms of my enjoyment. And I thought this was pretty mediocre. I didn't necessarily despise it, as there are some people out there who really didn't care for this film, and I don't fall into that group. But at the same time, especially after the first, I would say, 30 minutes, my interest level in this film sort of started to waver off, which is a shame because the last 20 minutes of this film should be the absolute best part, and it felt like just kind of there for me. All that being said, I thought that the performances were actually not that great either, too. Jason Clarke, who I've always enjoyed as an actor, is Toussaint did mention he's just a guy.
He's just a guy. He's just a milquetoast guy.
And
just a guy.
Over the last, 5 years or so, he's kind of just...
I think he's burned out at this point.
Well...
What are you talking about? He was John Connor in Terminator Genesis. Remember that movie, Terminator Genesis?
Unfortunately, I very much do.
Yeah, he was in Terminator Genesis, man.
He has gone nowhere but down over the last... He probably peaked, even if you don't love the film. His performance in
White House Down.
Anyways,
wow.
His performance in
I now remember that. Wow,
his performance in Zero Dark 30 is actually pretty much perfect.
Same thing.
Sure. Yep. So, performance-wise, other than John Lithgow, who's basically not able to be bad, he's just fantastic. Doesn't matter what he's given; he's just out there, just giving it his all.
Agreed.
Yep. I thought everybody else was just kind of okay here. I didn't think there was anything that was like shockingly bad necessarily.
Amy Simons, I thought, was very underutilized. Like, I don't think she did bad at all, but there could have been a lot more there, and there probably should have been based on what we have as far as a text and an original film that does more justice to that storyline.
Especially with the ending, where she is the major reason why we get the finale that we get. Yeah, I will say, man, and we can talk a little bit more about this when we're all kind of chatting about it.
Yeah.
But the execution of the storyline with her and her sister was terrible.
The execution was, but that storyline, especially because
the storyline's not bad.
Right, I was going to say, it's so important to the overall story here, but I could totally understand a first-time watcher of this lore,
no idea
watching this version
there.
and then thinking, why was that even in there?
Yeah. More because I think it's great to add to the dread and also the fear of her character, but at the same time, it almost seems like you get just like the bare minimum of that part of the story where it's like, and also too, I know that she's a kid, so kids have certain memories and whatever, and that makes sense. I had a really, really tough time with the dumbwaiter memory because it makes no sense that she sends the food up, then the food comes down completely, and then the body comes flying down right after. I don't know what the fuck happened there.
I don't remember. I don't remember that being in the original version, like the entire flashback of her taking care of her sister. Mm-hmm. But I could have sworn the death was a lot more incidental and not like some weird freak accident that she caused. Like, she was supposed to just be upset that the fact
she
that
didn't cause it because she
she
sent the
But I meant in her mind, like, because she clicked a button and whatever. Yeah. I believe in the original version it's a lot more just that the sister passed one night when she was babysitting. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, it's just supposed to be a lot more grounded than that. But
well, the other thing, too, that I think was completely missed, and I'm assuming was not hit on to lead to more of a surprise at the end, but I actually think it ended up going the other way, is that the idea of her wanting her sister to die, I think that probably should have come up when we see her in her younger version. I think it would have made it more impactful for later on in the story. Yeah. And also wouldn't have just kind of felt like it was something that the recreated daughter just made up on the fly. Yeah. So as I hand it off, I will say the final 20 minutes of this film are very bizarre.
Yeah, they suck ass.
Different terminology than I just used.
Nah, it's fucking awful.
Okay.
It's fuck awful.
Anyways, I did quite enjoy, for silly horror purposes, the scene with Lewis and his daughter the first time when she's been brought back and her eyes are all fucked up and he's trying to like have a conversation with her and it is super, super awkward. I fucking love it.
What are you going to tell Mom?
It's a weird...
What are you going to tell her?
Like the whole second half literally could be pretty much acted the same and maybe edited slightly differently and it could be a horror comedy. Like you don't have to
put Edgar right on this shit.
No, okay, I will say this.
Oh, yeah,
I literally laughed out
Which
loud
is
in the theater.
understandable.
No, I literally laughed out loud in the theater because of this terrifically bad acting moment between the girl who plays whatever her name is, the daughter. Ellie, yeah. And Jason Clarke, is they're trying to have this serious conversation about how, Dad, I can hear things outside. And he's like, the windows are closed. It just says it so fucking stoic.
And it's
just, it's almost like he's...
No, I can hear it on the outside.
No,
inside.
Stupid daughter. The windows are
No,
closed.
stupid daughter that I literally just brought back from the dead and who has like this lazy eye thing
but
going
that's the
on.
thing, and that's why the writers of this didn't think about anything as to why the original story works. Because here's the thing: you can't make Pet Sematary if you don't kill the cat and the toddler. Because none of the people that get killed and resurrected until the last 5 minutes should be able to form full sentences. Otherwise, it's just fucking weird and unintentionally hilarious.
So I will say I appreciate the effort, and that's where I'll leave it as. I appreciate the fact that they wanted to try something different and have a character who could do exactly what we were talking about. I think the execution is just probably not what it should have been. I will say, even though I thought the ending was pretty fucking stupid, the image of the 3 dead zombies walking up to the car and Church the cat hopping onto the hood, and even though I haven't seen it, but I know the original story, having that be the complete inverse from the original, I thought was actually pretty brilliant. And that sucks because that's just the end, and it's like, oh, where was the rest? Where like we ended up at a place that I actually think is pretty interesting, but the path we took to get there was a fucking disaster.
If
so.
the tone of the movie had matched the tone of that final scene, I thought that would have been a humdinger. Like, if it genuinely wanted to get rid of all pretense of an exploration of grief and just turn this into a
schlocky,
nightmare, whatnot, then that would have been fine. But it definitely is trying to somehow reach the apex of that kind of whatever, but also have its punchline cake and eat it too. So I have a lot more thoughts, but I think Tucson should go.
Okay.
This I didn't have any expectations for this film particularly. My history with Pet Sematary is entirely
I think it's pronounced Sematary.
Sematary? Oh, like pet.
Fucking got you to say it.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Yeah, Pet Sematary.
That's how it's spelled.
I don't care. I don't fucking care. I'm just gonna keep on saying it because I win.
Put that in the intro, please.
Yeah, whatever.
I don't normally make those requests.
It's already done.
That's great.
Do it right now.
So, Pet Sematary or Pet Sematary, as Nick likes to put it, I don't have any sort of
relationship. Don't put this on him.
I don't have any sort of relationship to this property at all. Like, my only sort of familiarity with it is based off of so many degrees of separation because I feel like this story, like so many other Stephen King stories, has proliferated into the popular cultural consciousness. To
it's in the lexicon.
Like it's definitely in the lexicon where I think the first time I ever heard Dead is Better, sometimes Dead is Better, is from a South Park episode that I watched when I was maybe like 7 or something like that. So really that's like the extent of like my familiarity with it. All I know is that you bury some shit in this graveyard. It's an Indian burial ground. You're not supposed to fucking do that, but you do it anyway because you're a stupid human and you have fucking stupid feelings. And then something comes out of it and it's not the same and it does evil shit. And you're like, oh my God, why did this happen? Because of your hubris, you fucking stupid idiot.
I would argue that this is like maybe one of the most famous realizations of the monkey's paw in fiction.
Yeah.
I mean, not like obviously the monkey's paw is the original, but I'm just saying,
but like you make a wish and then the wish totally like backfires on you. Yeah, I get what you're saying. But this film, I actually enjoyed the opening shot of the overhead of Judd's house on fire and then leading into the tracking shot, the sort of shot that zooms in on the front door of the house and seeing just like the trail of blood and like the set of footprints like leading into the. I enjoyed that.
No, I'm with you, but I'm trying to actually remember. Like, does the film actually show us that?
Yeah, they show us that. Like I.
No, I don't mean in the beginning.
In the beginning,
I mean
the first shot.
I'm talking by the time the climax.
Yes.
we get to see. I know, obviously, we see the house burning.
Yeah.
But do we understand why there's blood all over the property and whatnot?
I'm saying I just like the first shot. I don't. Look.
I just feel like
I
there's a
saw this
disconnect.
late last night, and my memory of it is already faded.
Which
It's
is
like,
understandable.
and that's sort of my opinion about this film in general. It's like it's very unremarkable. It's very unmemorable. I jumped at a couple of the jump scares just because I'm a scaredy cat, but you could pretty much set a fucking you could set a fucking watch
We'll bury you.
so many of these to these jump scenes like these.
None of them were imaginative, even if they
None
were
of them, no.
loud. Because
No.
I'm with you.
You know, I think that Jason Clarke is a boring milquetoast actor, and I don't like him in anything.
What?
I think that
Really?
yeah,
Ever?
I don't like him. I think he's
Oh.
boring. Yeah,
I mean,
I'm
with you, Alex, but I wouldn't also go to bat for him.
yeah, I wouldn't go to bat for him.
Didn't like him in the second Planet of the Apes.
I didn't even remember that he was in that. That's the point. Like
That's
I like
racist.
No, I didn't remember that he was in that. Literally,
You only remember-
he was
He was the main
he was.
character.
I know.
only
I know
remember the
exactly,
apes.
and that's the point. Like at most, he is competent, and he is already eclipsed by every other fucking person. The man who's in a fucking motion capture suit playing Caesar is more charismatic and more interesting than fucking Jason Clarke on any other day. On more remarkable and more memorable on any other day.
That's I will say that's a little bit not fair to compare him to.
I'm sorry, it's not fair.
Him to Andy Serkis doing motion capture.
That's my opinion. He's unremarkable.
Anyways, obviously you don't know his best work as you have not seen Serenity, so maybe someday you'll be lucky enough to watch it.
The only Serenity that I acknowledge is the Joss Whedon film, okay? And I don't recognize any other fucking film called Serenity.
If you
Anyway,
ever want to watch that, you'll be
I
watching
won't.
it by yourself.
Yeah, no. The main draw for me with this was John Lithgow. I mean, he starred in Third Rock from the Sun, so for me, he can do no wrong. I love that show. It is a classic. And just driving to the studio today, I was like, oh, man, I really fucking love that show. I want to watch that again. It's like it's been a dog's day since I watched that on television.
John Lithgow is an absolute treasure.
Oh, yes, he is.
And
a national treasure.
I think, I don't know, I'm pretty sure I'm the one who brought it up, but maybe, I know I bought the tickets for us to go. But
Yeah.
years ago, I mean, this is like 4 years ago now?
When he was in Aurora?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
Me and Nick went to go see him just perform a one-man reading of stories.
That was crazy because it's not what I thought it was going to be.
I didn't
and
think
I
it
think
was what it was going to be either.
Right. And yet, because he's that good, like, that's how good he is, that even though I was completely like, oh, this is not what I thought we were buying tickets to, what he had to offer instead was just as fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, and the idea of him doing this extremely horror-centric story at the beginning, and then he did a 180 and did a comedic story the second time.
That's interesting.
And it actually worked together. I mean, not story-wise didn't go together, but you know, his transition from one to the other went basically flawlessly. I mean, he's just a fucking delight.
I mean,
Yeah,
for me,
you hit him hard, and then you sort of like fluff them up afterwards. Like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that night was over in like a flash, which I mean, like in
a good way.
Because
Yeah.
if you're not enjoying something like that, then it's like, oh boy,
It's so long.
Is he gonna leave the stage now?
Yeah, no, he was great. But I mean, I've always been a huge fan, and his career is ridiculous. Like
Yeah.
the fact that he was the villain in Cliffhanger and has made it from that to Third Rock from the Sun to The Crown to fucking Interstellar. Like,
Yeah.
Orange
oh my
County.
God, yeah. Orange
He's
County.
actually great.
Orange
He
County is a
is.
fucking great movie.
Right?
playing the
What are
father.
you right about? You're not oppressed. You're not gay.
Oh my God, we need to do an episode on Orange County someday.
We would.
Oh my God. You're not gay. What the fuck?
That's a
Have you ever seen that?
I've seen it.
Oh,
I've
okay.
seen it multiple times. That's like the best movie that's ever come out of like MTV Films back when they
Yes.
were doing that shit. Like,
Well,
it's-
that and Election, because I always forget that was an MTV film.
Okay, yeah.
Even though it doesn't really feel like one.
That's a fun time. We were just talking about this today at work. Actually, films of that era were all rated PG-13, and they are all horribly
Oh, yeah.
aged now.
Oh, yeah.
Like people using
homophobic slurs. Yeah.
left and right.
Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
But that movie, honestly, we watched it, Alex, you and I, we watched it like a couple of years ago, and it held up.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying every line, but like in general,
It's usually my go-to now in terms of a short film delivering its message, but that's like hour and 17
Who
minutes.
was the actor who played the professor?
Kevin Kline.
Kevin Kline.
Oh, I like him too.
Yeah.
He was really good in that too. Anyway, going back to Pet Sematary,
We'll just keep talking about Orange County. Fuck it.
I would much,
Pet Sematary.
I would much rather like talk about John Lithgow's illustrious career, but we're going to talk about this, which, as bad as it can't dampen his illustrious career. Yeah, the girl who played Ellie, what's her name? The actress. It doesn't really matter, does it?
find out.
Yeah.
Well, she was fine.
I mean,
She was a
she was
child.
fine. Like you look at her and she's like, yeah, that's a Stephen King girl. She's gonna die and then she's gonna come back all creepy and stuff. She's already got that sort of like the makeup. Like it just sort of works. Like yeah.
Jete Lawrence.
Jete Lauren. Oh, what a pretty name. Yeah, she was okay.
She must be friend. Oh my. Her career has not been great. She was been in this and The Snowman.
Oh God, yeah. Well, yeah, it's she was all right in this. I like the cat. The cat's cool.
Can I tell you some fun facts?
There's multiple cats. Yeah.
There is.
If you wanna what?
There's 2 cats, actors.
There was 8 actually.
What?
Believe
Yeah.
it or not.
Why is there like a viral meme going around right now that was saying that one played the mean cat and the other one played the...
Nope.
I got
Actually,
two versions.
I was going to bring this up.
Two versions.
If you want to go, I mean, it's not like a fantastic article or anything like that, but Slash Film did an article about it. There were 8 cats, and they all had a very specific trait that they could do.
That's usually with cats.
From whether it be being cuddly or hissing or scratching or that kind of thing. There were 8 of them, and apparently it was. The article is great because it's someone who is a cat person. The idea that basically the scenes that the cats were in took a lot longer than any of the other scenes because they had to fucking wait for the cats to get their shit together.
Yeah,
I love
prima
reading
donnas.
about that kind of shit versus when they have a dog and they're always like, yeah, we had 2 dogs.
Yeah.
One had to do all the tricks and the other one just had to sit. Like,
Yeah.
it's
A dog's
always
life.
that
Also,
simple...
they brought one of the cats to the premiere and put a regular tie on him, and it's
Ah,
adorable.
That
Yeah.
is adorable.
So
Yeah, we're looking at the
it
picture
is-
right now. It's
But
cool.
like I read about the same kind of thing with Inside Llewyn Davis, which makes me even laugh even harder because this movie you actually have to have that cat do a lot of things. Whereas Inside Llewyn Davis, that cat was for the most part just a passive character who just had to be in the scene. So the idea that they still needed like 6 or 7 cats just to be a fucking cat just cracks me up.
Anyway, the horror in this film isn't that scary. I jumped at a lot of jump scares because I'm a scaredy cat, but you could set a stopwatch to it. I think that the acting is pretty subpar. I think that John Lithgow did what he did, whatever. He's okay because he's John Lithgow. He can make anything like work if he like works at it hard enough. I wanted to ask a question of the people who have actually seen the original Pet Sematary film, or
So that would be Nick.
Yeah.
Hi.
So the scene
My
where
name is...
your name is Nick. Your name is Nick. Anyway,
What?
your name is Nick. Anyway,
Pet Sematary.
when
Sorry.
Judd is in his house and
Yes.
he's getting the gun, and like there's the Achilles tendon scene.
Yes.
Is that in the original film as well?
Yes.
Okay, that is like my absolute fucking fear and phobia.
Yeah.
Just like things happen to my feet, things happen to my fucking tendons.
Yeah.
Like fuck, I gotta walk on those, man. Just leave my fucking
When
feet
we were
alone.
walking-
I would say roughly the Judd house section is the exact same as far as how
Yeah.
he dies, how he's killed, other than who's doing it. But yeah.
Kenny was telling me that that's one of his favorite things is anyone being stabbed through the Achilles tendon. I'm like, that's really specific, but okay.
Yeah, like when
I can
we
see that.
when
That's in the trailer, by the way, which I thought was really. I mean, I guess if it's in the original, it's fine. But
yeah, it was like, remember this scene? We did it again. It was like the part in. I know this is a throwback, but when we went to go see A Quiet Place, and the scene where she like steps on the fucking nail, like fuck,
nothing's worse.
god damn it.
Nothing's worse than Marv stepping on the nail in the original Home Alone.
Ah!
Because that really wasn't a trope before then. That was the first
my
time that,
that was
shit
just
happened.
disgusting.
Why did you let this happen? Oh god.
Especially because there's feathers and it's just so
Well, and-
dirty.
Daniel Stern's incredible reaction.
Yeah. Too bad that didn't happen in A Quiet Place. I bet that film would have ended a very different way.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. Anyway, this film is boring. It's really boring. It's really bad. I fucking hated that ending. I liked it up to the point with like them walking up to the car, but then
You didn't like that?
as soon as it ended on the car unlocking sound, like my friend who I went to go see this with burst into laughter at that.
Wait, did it? Did the car unlock?
Yeah, it unlocked.
Oh,
yeah, it was like,
I didn't hear that. Like,
yeah,
only
and that-
because I'm hard of hearing, so I genuinely thought it was an ambiguous ending. That just actually makes me like it less. 'Cause
Yeah,
I
yeah,
thought
exactly.
The idea was that
Yeah.
it would just end at that moment because he was told not to open the door for
Yeah.
anybody.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a funny, ironic ending.
Yeah.
But if they actually
This
put
is
that
this is
noise
another
in
case
there,
of like
that's
having your cake and
fucking
eating it too,
stupid.
and that shit. Like, so my friend like burst into laughter, and I was like, "That's not. I don't like that at all." I literally was just shaking my head. I was like, "That's so fucking stupid. That literally deflates whatever. Like, it's like the most. Like, imagine you're trying to like inflate a hot air balloon, and you give such a half-ass effort that it's like less than a fourth of the way,
And you blow it.
and then at the end it
Wow.
just like lets whatever
You
air
know-
was in that, and I'm just like, wow, it's
You know-
like
you know what's interesting?
You didn't even try.
You know what's interesting about that?
What?
This is just a thought. My guess is that was edited in post after it was screened for
so that
test
there's some
audiences.
kind of clarity.
We don't know whether they open it or not. You gotta let the
This is the
fucking
kind of
car
film.
alarm.
No,
this
that's
is the kind of film that
absolutely-
would very much listen to those kind of notes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that also could be why I didn't even hear it, because it's such a throwaway, like, added on noise and not something that's actually natural to the
Because
way it's edited.
apparently, from another story I was reading about this particular film, this version at least,
Mm-hmm.
there were 3 different endings that they screened for test audiences.
Oh,
And
of course.
And this was the most diabolical out of them.
Oh, boy.
Apparently, one of them was almost like a happy ending, which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it didn't make sense.
But that's okay.
Yeah, this what can I say about this film that I haven't already said? Because there's really
Yeah, you pretty much shit all over
there's
it.
There's not a lot to say about it. It's it's boring. It's fucking boring, and I don't like it at all. Nick,
Thank you. I'm a fan of Pet Sematary, the story. I haven't
what?
read the... Oh, I'm so sorry. Pet Sematary.
ah,
It's what happens when your semen has dysentery.
Oh my god.
So,
What the fuck?
why do you have me on this podcast if you're just going to be ashamed of all the things I say?
I don't know why. I ask myself that every day.
You've been on like 195 of these things. It's kind of hard to disinvite you now. So
Aw, that's sweet.
He
I'm
just shows up. He's like fucking church.
I'm a fan of this story overall. Not necessarily this version, but no matter how cheesy the '80s movie is, and I haven't read the book, although I have always been interested ever since I saw the original movie. I just think it totally nails, even if sometimes if it's a little clumsy, the idea of how grief can make us do unspeakable things and just kind of erases all rational thought if we are given the chance at something that seems idyllic in our grief-stricken minds that is in actuality just a fucking nightmare. And I don't think this film understands that whatsoever. Or if it does, it's not concerned with it whatsoever to the point where it would rather laugh at it. And it's because of that I just find that this film is an ultimate failure. Okay, so this is Kenny's right in the sense that this movie makes a very crucial change, and I think it does do that because it wants to play the whole remake card that's fun for everyone, people who are fans of the story and people who have never seen it before.
You're going to see your favorite scenes, but they're going to be contextualized in a totally different way, and you're going to bring out some new meaning out of it. No, we're just going to see the same things over again because you like that.
But but the thing is, you don't see the same things over again, because what's confusing is that all they did was change that part, which means that everything that follows that moment is actually just dumber than it could possibly be, and it doesn't make any thematic sense. So,
Is the truck in the original film?
oh yeah, the truck, the highway, and the trucks that always zoom by. I mean, that's the whole conceit.
Yeah, the real cosmic horror is fucking corporate America that allows this to happen. And why didn't you fucking sue that company for gross negligence because that guy decided to like look at his phone because he's getting a call from Sheena on his fucking flip phone?
I will say in the original version, Gage, the little scamp, runs out in front of the truck in a much more. Like, here, he's just in the street for a good... So the idea that I'm not saying that Gage is to blame.
I still don't know why
I'm
they
saying
didn't
it's
pursue
a
legal
lot
action.
more-
I actually think, and I don't know how it plays out in the original, but the parents are to blame.
Oh, and
because
they are in the
fucking,
movie.
They're fucking sending the kids off in different directions.
I agree, and
yeah.
and they are in the movie. And actually, in the movie, there's no birthday party. They're literally
In the original? Or
the original, yeah.
Okay.
And in the novel, from what I've read, from what I've read, the '80s version is basically a pretty page-to-screen adaptation. And in the original, it's Judd and the family out at a picnic over closer to on the other side of the street, closer to Judd's house than their house. And what's great is that they already, throughout the picture of the original, have Gage kind of walk toward the street a few times where they're like, have to run and grab him, and they're like, you can't do that. So it's like by the third time and he does it, it's unfortunately fatal. And I know that sounds like, oh, maybe like it's bad writing, but if anything, I think it's more realistic. Like, they wouldn't learn from their, child's behavior. And then the one time he did it when it was just too late, it's just even more awful because it kind of is their fault, and that's part of the grief. That here, as much as it is their fault because they're bad parents and didn't quite figure it out, it's also just kind of like a freak accident because they were at a party and whatever. I'm just saying the correlation there is not as strong as it is in the original version, where it makes it pretty clear that they should have been watching him like a hawk because he had a tendency to walk out into the street.
Why did the doctor not just kill the cat with a shovel when he let it go?
When he let the cat go.
Yeah,
oh,
when he was
because
when he was going to euthanize the cat, when he was going to put the cat down, the cat kept on scratching him like, "Fuck you, stupid cat." And then
because in the original version, he does euthanize the cat because it makes a lot more sense, and that's actually so. Okay, so here's the thing: I'm going to talk about the difference between this movie and the original. Both the novel and the film, starting from the point in which the truck arrives, because I think that's where this film ultimately fails. So
that's where the truck arrives and it literally just forks in the road.
And yes, and not only that, but because this movie also wants to kind of slap you across the face with this change, because it puts Gage in the street, only to have him be the reason why the truck swerves and then capsizes over Ellie, is kind of just a fucking disgusting choice in my opinion.
The timeline diverged.
Yeah, it just makes it so trivial, and all for the point of remake and remix, whatever.
Remix, bum 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 bum, World Star exclusive, Pet Sematary.
Yep, and so for that to happen in such a garish way when this movie is trying to take these things seriously, that was the first mistake. Not to mention the fact that we don't get to see a child get crushed by a truck. I'm sorry, but
if you're gonna remix Pet Sematary, why even bother if you're not gonna go all the way?
I agree,
and it would have made sense if they tried to make it rated PG-13 at least, but it's R-rated.
Right, that's why I was like waiting and whatnot. Yeah. And I said to you before we saw it, and of course I had no idea how wrong that I would be. But I literally said to you in the podcast, I'm like, they better show us the centerpiece because that's just fucking chickening out. I'm like, but it's 2019, and I feel like they're just like, we can't do that. And sure enough, I don't know, because even though it's supposed to be, you're supposed to be uncomfortable with it. It's supposed to be
American
it's
films
2019.
Yeah, but no.
There is not killing kids on screen is still very much a thing.
Okay, so we got to wait till the second term. Okay, that's cool. Sorry.
I mean, you could have.
I'm not saying we need to see her dragged onto the concrete.
It would have had to be a split-second thing,
right? Yeah. But that's all. I mean, I'm talking just show an impact of a rag doll getting smushed.
Yeah.
So
they did in a Scary Movie.
That's true.
Different effect.
Yeah.
So anyway, from that point on, this movie does not have the heft in its writing to support this major change because it doesn't realize why King wrote it the way he did to begin with. For Ellie to die, instead of Gage, changes quite a few things. And I'm going to kind of go through them, and that's going to be my opening thoughts in general. But, okay, if Ellie is the one that dies, and then is resurrected, obviously, her whole talk in the beginning about being scared of death just goes out the window. Because she's supposed to technically, even though she's a child, she's supposed to go through the grieving process just like her parents are when Gage is killed, because she is going through a fucking awful time after she's been moved to this place. And so the talks between the parents and her just feel so fucking hollow in the wake of the fact that it's not even her character that has to live past a moment that no child, let alone an adult, should have to reckon with. B, when the mother takes Gage away, because in the original it's flipped, it would be Ellie goes away with her. Okay. It makes no sense that they literally bent over backwards to insert the same plot device for Gage that would have worked a lot better with Ellie, where when Ellie is over there with her mother and her grandparents, she says in the original movie, she starts having the same exact nightmares that Lewis was having in the beginning about the ground is sour. Okay, she's 9 years old, so she can actually articulate that. The fact that the mother in this movie is somehow able to fucking pick up on the nightmares that we as the audience are never even shown, but that her child is able to say, oh my God, our 1-year-old is having the same dreams that you are having.
Keeps on saying the name of the guy who died.
That's just, it's just fucking stupid.
I will say, there is one part of that I actually somewhat disagree with you. No, hold on. Earlier in the film, when Ellie is drawing, and Lewis comes upon the one drawing that is kind of a very, very vague, drawn by a small child, and it was a drawing of the man who was killed there. So I think,
first of all, it was just a stick
drew this?
figure.
It was Gage. No,
I'm just saying
that's not what it is.
That's okay.
Yeah,
but I think that's what he was going for. Again, he's fucking a year and a half old.
Yeah, children's drawings are just a trope. Okay,
I'm just saying.
I love how Nick's like, well, I'm not impressed.
I'm not impressed.
I'm not impressed.
All I'm saying
is this is your expressionist.
Even if she drew that. The mom didn't see that drawing. All I'm trying to say is the idea that the mom is actually articulating something as stupid as my 1-year-old who can't even speak full sentences was somehow able to convey to me that he's having the same exact nightmares that you've been having that you've never told me about. Like, that makes no sense whatsoever. When a 9-year-old could come to your bedside and say, "Mommy, I just had a dream where a man told me the ground is sour," and like that triggers a memory, and even if she doesn't understand it,
that makes
sense. It's just whatever.
I want to talk about one aspect of this film that I feel like I see it in a lot of contemporary films, and it's like it's an element, it's a trope, it's a visual trope that I've been very curious about, and I want to see if you guys have picked up on it also, right? What the fuck is with the use of ballerina imagery and ballerina shots in order to sort of punctuate horror? Because I've seen that not only in Us, I've not only seen that in this, I've also seen that in
it's in the John Wick trailer.
It's in the John Wick trailer, and it's also in the Avengers Age of Ultron thing. Like, what the fuck? No, that's used to be like some type of creepy punctuating moment, and I'm trying to understand why
as someone who oddly just happened to watch Age of Ultron again last night.
Oh,
just pulled that out of the bag.
Oh shit, why?
I mean, I like it.
That's okay.
I'm the only one, but that's fine.
And also, the movie's coming out.
Oh, okay.
That does actually make sense, yes. Yeah. That is one of the reasons why I've been catching up on a couple of the Marvel movies again.
Yeah. Okay.
It's that time of year.
It's that time of year.
It's
Christmas.
It does fit into what Black Widow's past is, which is why it's included.
I'm not saying that it's arbitrary and it's not there for no reason, but I see this popping up in its usage in order to punctuate these creepy sort of moments of juxtaposition. And I'm trying to understand what is it with ballerinas and horror that work together.
A version that's not a horror film, but I think that's going for a similar thing of what you're talking about was just used in the movie Red Sparrow.
Yeah.
Where an assassination attack is basically happening concurrently with a ballet performance.
Yeah.
And it's
moments of violence that are then punctuated with this sort of regal, sort of elegance, choreographed elegance.
My thoughts on that is that I think it's a highbrow, lowbrow type thing where people think that because horror is looked at as one thing, if you inject it with classical forms of art that most people don't go out of their way to see, and I say most people just meaning the mainstream audience of who's probably going to sit down and watch a movie like Pet Sematary in the theater, the remake of Pet Sematary
Yeah.
in the theater, that they will just let that be a signifier of quote unquote.
Oh, we have aspirational
Gravitas.
qualities. Yeah, gravitas and aspirational qualities in that as well. It's just very interesting. Like I want to dig more into that. Like it's and I haven't seen.
I think it started with Black Swan.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's
I think
been
it
on
predates that. I feel like
Well,
there's
no. I don't mean that it
Are you talking about like the
originated.
the modern?
I'm saying the trend.
the contemporary
Yes.
trend of that
Black-
originates with Black
right,
Swan.
right.
Yeah.
I don't mean that.
Which
yeah.
that film is. That's what that film is about.
I know.
Sure.
Yeah. The
But I'm saying ever
juxtapositions
since
there.
then, people got the itch of like, oh yeah, we could throw that in.
We
there.
just put ballerines and everything. And, you know, it'll be...
Again, that's literally what that story is about.
Yeah. So, I don't
It's
know.
not just a. From what you were saying, 'cause
I haven't seen it yet, so
What's that?
I haven't seen Black Swan.
That's a really good film.
We should review it.
That's one of Darren Aronofsky's better films.
Really?
Yeah, no, it's actually very good.
Like, how would you rank that? Like just off the cuff. Like, where does that rank? Is it like number 2, number 3 on like his best films?
I mean, for me, it's my favorite film of his.
Oh, okay.
It's up. I mean, yeah, The Wrestler is your favorite film of his. I'm guessing.
And where does Requiem for a Dream fall? 3, 4, lower?
I don't know. I don't really want to watch any of it other than Black Swan or The Wrestler.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Black-
Not even Noah.
Black Swan's a
No.
Noah.
Black Swan's a fantastic film.
Although I do have. No, wait, that's not one of his films. Never mind. I was thinking of somebody else. So, yeah, no, those are the only 2 films I want to watch of it. I've never actually seen Pi, and I'm actually.
I like Pie.
I was going to say, I'm sure I would actually be okay with it.
Yeah, like the movie. I've seen Pie.
But
I like it.
I don't know that I would like. It would change my opinion on Darren
Yeah.
Aronofsky.
I mean,
That used to be like the hipster like film goer film back when I was in undergrad. It was like, oh man, have you seen Pie? And I'm just like, yeah, I watched it in high school. It's okay.
we don't have to, but do you guys want to do an episode on Black Swan next week?
Fuck yeah, let's do it. What better reason for me to like finally like sit down and finally watch it? I actually just recently finally sat down and watched Neil Blomkamp's Elysium.
So you loved it.
I fucking hated that film, and I'm like, wow, this is the most heavy-handed schlock of an allegory that I've ever watched, and this man is going to be responsible for a new canonical sequel to RoboCop. Fuck that shit. I can't believe I ever co-signed this guy doing anything, let alone in the Alien universe, let alone in the RoboCop universe. Like, why does this guy keep on getting work? I know that's pretty aggressive, but honestly, I'm kind of aghast because his premises are much more interesting than his actual execution, and he should really like team up with a scriptwriter who actually knows what the fuck he's doing.
Yeah.
So that was just my out of nowhere Blomkamp screed in the middle of our
That
Pet Cemetery.
really was out of nowhere.
In our Pet Cemetery review, because that is essentially more interesting to me than an actual film of Pet Cemetery.
That's
so
fair.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll just really quickly say that this version of the film, for Jason Clarke's character of Lewis to have these conversations with his dead daughter, just makes the whole ordeal kind of a chore to watch instead of being a slightly more surrealistic version of that kind of monkey's paw wish, because you kind of understand why he would just try to remain calm and ride this out, because I'm not saying she's not creepy looking and it's not weird or whatever, but like he made the choice, so he's not going to kill her until she does something like awful, you know what I mean? Whereas in the original, like there's something off from the beginning to the point where, well, in this case it's with a baby, but because it's like a cat, a toddler can't really do much other than what it could have already done before it died. So it's this kind of creepy, like, is this how I remembered this person or is this not? And when Ellie comes back, it is so clear that she's not. So it's just kind of stale from the minute that she shows up.
Yeah, the idea of this film wanting to do both things, and as you've put, have its cake and eat it too. I think sort of is a discredit to the idea of the filmmakers trying to make something different out of something that's the same. Whereas I feel like they tried to think of the best possible ways to abruptly change the story, and this was the best that they came up with. And instead of thinking, we should work on this for a while, they thought, we've done it! And
That's the
then
thing.
they put it into
Right.
action.
I'm not against the idea of switching the whatever, but it's like they just switched that, and then they copy
the rest of the story the exact same.
And there that makes no sense. And other than the last scene in and of itself, because in the original, after Gage has killed his mother, which is actually a great scene in the original movie, because the mother is outside the house, kind of terrified about what she might find in the house, because she knows there's a lot of shit going on.
And she gets got.
And she hears the voice of her sister, and the grief of that lures her into the house, only to see Gabe and Gage.
Keep on doing
God
that.
fucking damn it.
Yeah. Pet Sematary, Pet Cemetery,
well,
Gabe,
that's just
Gage.
me correcting what it should be. Only to see Gage standing there and creepily laughing at her as a toddler. And what I love is that in that scene, like, all he's doing is being a baby, but kind of a shitty baby.
I'm the baby, gotta love me.
So she leans down to pick him up anyway, and of course he like slits her throat.
Yeah.
But the punchline of the original movie could also be seen as a joke, but in my opinion, it's more of a joke in a very sad way. Whereas this is more of a like, haha, this is they're fucking zombies, like motherfuckers. We changed it. Because in the original, when...
Also, this film was probably about 5 years too late to the zombie party also.
Yeah, that's true. But the original, when Lewis wakes up from his nap, basically, because he's able to take a nap through all this shit.
Hey, he's been tuckered out, man. He's gone through a lot.
Actually, it kind of makes a little sense. Like, he's been awake for like 3 days straight, so he just kind of crashes. But he gathers together... all these needles, and that's where being a doctor comes in, and he euthanizes the cat and then his own child. And I feel like the image of a human euthanizing their child in the same way you would to put down a cat.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very Pet Cemetery-like. Yeah. So I feel like that image is lost here. And then because he goes through the motions of doing all that, he then, what I love is the irrationality of his grief is still present even after he solved his problem. Because then he takes the wife and takes her to the burial ground because he's still to that moment thinking, well, it's been even less time that the wife has been dead than Gage or the cat.
I gotcha.
And then he brings her straight to there and then waits in his kitchen until she comes back to him. And then the final moment is her coming back and going to give him a hug as she grabs a knife as it like fades to black. And I think it's genuinely kind of emotionally devastating because you could read that as one of two ways. You could actually say that he knew that would happen, but he wanted to
be with her.
Right, or that he didn't know that was happening because he's just going to be going down this cycle of grief.
Yeah.
And all that nuance and that kind of introspection of how a person is dealing with both the grief of unexpected things, but the grief of your own choices and the regret that's coupled with that.
There are no good choices.
Yeah.
There's just...
It's completely void and vacant in a film like this.
Yeah.
Can I say, and this is a really, really random offshoot, but I recently just watched like a third of this film, and especially the scene I'm going to talk about.
Age of Ultron.
No. Although I did just watch it yesterday. But the specifically with pets and grief.
A Dog's Life?
No.
Homeward Bound?
You're just naming anything that has pets. This is not going well.
The Secret Life of Pets?
I was going to say that next,
2.
actually. Yeah.
Second one. No.
Louis C.K. will not be back.
No.
Wow. If it was just like a Marvel Cinematic Universe, like Louis C.K. will not be back. Before any of that shit actually happened. That'd be incredible. Why is he not coming back? Oh, they knew. Why did they still let this come out?
Anyway.
Hopefully there's not a scene in which they take Louis C.K.'s dog to the pound and then just like put it down.
I hope so. It's just a silent scene.
He's the main character.
For the children,
Yeah.
They just replaced him with some other person.
Yeah.
Anyways, the scene in I Am Legend where Will Smith has to kill his dog that has become a zombie is pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't seen that movie.
Yeah, it is.
Ever.
Oh.
I remember when that
terrible.
came out, and then I was meaning to see it, but never did, and then I never really had it.
It's not the greatest.
I was
Not
meant to
bad.
read the book. I never did. I needed to read the book. I heard it's really good.
This is a good conversation.
Okay, really Really digging deep here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I guess we can just continue discussing everything that happens after the daughter comes back, because I think that's where the film really tries to plant its flag in probably mostly a bad way. The idea of the daughter kind of creepily dancing around with the mask on in Judd's house, I actually kind of liked. But at the same time, that was just one of those things that was put in there to look cool, and it worked for me. But I feel like that's another discredit to these filmmakers, is that they had nothing really for this film. They had things that kind of maybe looked cool, and that's all they were going off of, and they had really nothing
Stuff
to
you
say.
can make a trailer out of.
Oh, yeah.
But not
A lot of
movie.
trailer shots.
Yeah.
A lot of trailer shots.
You know what has a lot of trailer shots? The new Joker movie.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
How about that Lion King trailer, by the way?
Yeah, it's all right. It's okay.
I think it's gonna be a king like no king was before.
Yeah. I mean,
It'll do very well.
I did find myself laughing at the end of that trailer when they were
Really?
we mo away. I was like, I don't know, I'm kind of won over a little bit by that. I think that the casting for those two characters.
I thought you meant laughing like at it, and I was like, wow.
No, I found myself laughing along with it. I was like, oh, that's pretty funny. I was like,
I haven't seen the trailer. Does this trailer at all hint more at its musical roots, other than that moment?
I mean, there's the montage that they sort of.
But they're not giving you a
They
sense
replicate,
as
but
to
they don't have the
how it
song
works.
that's a
Okay.
part of it. Yeah,
That's what I was just curious.
yeah.
There's also they don't really show the animals moving their mouths when they're talking.
Oh,
which I thought was
good.
weird.
Yeah.
That's a good sign.
That's a great sign.
Fucking PETA.
You're gonna blame PETA for this shit?
Yeah.
That's a good sign.
You can't have them moving their mouths, okay? It's inhumane.
Those aren't real animals.
No,
But they're based on real
yeah,
animals.
we can't show violence against animals that aren't real. It's like, I get that, and it's like I understand, but it's just like
Lots of animals that are dying.
At the
in
same
Lion
time,
King.
it's Lion King, and there's a circle of life, and just like fuck mortality.
Yeah, that message is kind of weird in a children's film, by the way. Everything in this area belongs to us, and it also all has to be in a circle in a place. It's
Wow, it's almost as if like who actually wrote this story?
Billy Shakes.
Oh, okay, yeah. Everything belongs to us.
yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Everything belongs to us.
But
Everything the sun touches is ours.
Yeah.
The sun will
May-
never set on the British Empire.
Mufasa is basically the Earl of Grantham. Like, he's basically from Downton Abbey, who's like, we love working with people as long as we live in the big house.
Yeah,
Like-
and he had the dog named Isis.
Yeah, that's actually true. Yeah. That's a little weird. It's not a good look in the later seasons.
yeah, it's really not.
When they're crying because Isis dies in the later season, that's just sad.
Thanks for ruining it for me.
That's okay.
Season
Now I
4.
can. Now I actually want
the-
to watch it.
The fucking show jumped 2 to 3 years every season. That dog was not going to survive the show.
Here's Maggie Smith. She's still there.
Well, she's
Damn.
Maggie Smith.
She's like 80 in the first season, and it's 20 years in between. It's the early 1900s.
Hey man,
God.
they
I'm
live
just saying,
very long.
You haven't lived.
Women outlive men.
Oh, they don't.
Yes, they
the
do.
life expectancy then was like 50.
Yeah, well, she had a very cushy life, and she also had good genes.
She doesn't even know what a weekend is.
Doesn't even know what a weekend is.
Because
I'm just saying, you haven't lived until you've seen a bunch of British aristocrats crying and sobbing and saying, "ISIS is gone."
Oh my god! Yes.
So yeah, if only they had the Indian burial ground. ISIS is back. Oh, but it's scarier than before.
we really can't have anything.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Anyway,
Fucking British.
so back to Pet Sematary. Yeah, I just think it's an abject failure all around. I thought the first half was decent, but it really tanked, and I was very disappointed in the Rachel storyline because that's one of the most affecting parts of the original and of the novel, from what I would presume. But But here, it's such an afterthought by the time Rachel is mixed up within the climax, when it's supposed to inform the climax and her actions. And I know who saw it, you had kind of laughed and agreed with Kenny, and I kind of want to talk about that moment.
Yeah, let's talk
when
about that.
he mentioned how, it's like you got married and you never talked about.
That's how I felt when I was in the theater.
Yeah, I will say, I'm not going to defend however it was acted in this movie,
Yeah.
but I do think
But the realism
in
of
general is supposed to be more of just like they've had this fight a million times, and they keep thinking. I'm not saying that that's how it's presented in this version.
No, that's not how it's presented
Right.
in this film. It feels like we've never talked. Like what was that? I was going to ask you the same thing. I was just like the way they phrase that. I was just
but
like,
even though we've never talked about it, that also kind of makes a little bit of sense because he will not talk to her about death or whatever because of the sister, and she will not talk about death as anything other than a purely evangelical Christian.
So their respective perspectives on death, whereas he has this very clinical, matter-of-fact, scientific, sort of agnostic, if not
man of science,
atheist,
woman of
atheist,
faith.
atheist man, woman of faith, sort of dynamic. And then that's also reversed with him, just he goes from man of science to full on occult.
Yeah.
Let's just go right down that road.
Which actually,
Yeah, that's.
I mean, if you're given factually something that could be that,
Yeah.
and also too, you are in a desperation place where
The occult is science.
Yeah, you'll fucking believe anybody who will tell you anything.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Tell you the fucking sky is black, and you're just like, yeah, it is at night.
Yeah.
Nick, while we're kind of on this a little bit, you had mentioned something regarding when I was reading Kenny's review about his thought on the parents and the fact of them not talking about these issues beforehand, and that you had some thoughts on that.
Well, that was my main thought, which is that I actually buy it in any version if it's something that they haven't discussed, because the two of them have always pented this up for different reasons. Her reason being that she doesn't want to face what has happened to her as a trauma as her childhood, and so therefore she's just been lock steady as from that point on that something good must have happened to her due to the just horrible reality that existed for her on Earth, whereas he's never also had to think about it twice because he's always wanted to be a doctor and always wanted to prevent that very thing from happening and whatnot. And so I believe that the two of them never really had to discuss it with each other because they were consenting adults, and it wasn't until a child in their life had to ask the big question of, what is this?
What is death?
So, and in the other version, I'll say this too, there's a lot more of these, like when Ellie brings it up between the two of them, there's a lot more of these kind of pained looks between the couple, instead of just Jason Clarke vomiting out the script, and then Amy Simons is kind of going, what? It's a lot more of this kind of he looks at her and at Rachel and's like, yeah, sorry, I'm gonna do this, and then well, there's nothing in the afterlife, whatever, and then she looks at him like, fuck you, haven't we talked about this a million times?
Right.
So I do think it was kind of presented wrong here, but I do buy the fact that they don't really have this talk often because neither one of them. One is just convinced by
they might have just had the argument and then it just sort of ended in one of those stalemates where they just quietly agree to disagree.
Well, and he, what in this particular, I haven't seen the other one, but in this film particularly, when they are faced with actually a thing that could lead to them having to physically talk to their children, at least Ellie, about this, they choose to just kind of say, yeah, he ran away, which is actually, you know what, and I guess since it's a child, I mean, I'm not harping on this too much, but I feel like that's actually so much worse.
Oh, yeah.
The idea of, no, he ran away because he doesn't fucking like you anymore, as opposed to, he got run over by a truck in a freak accident. She'll understand that church just doesn't care for her anymore.
Honestly, if all they had to do was say, yeah, he got ran over by a truck, so don't fucking go out in the street, Ellie.
That would have solved a lot of problems, actually.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Sometimes dead really is better.
The other thing, too, I also think that he ran away, he went to a farm as a product of the 80s and earlier. Like, I'm not saying people don't say that nowadays, but I do think we're slightly more informed about...
He went to a farm. What farm?
Yeah.
What farm?
But I do think that's kind of an antiquated thing. I haven't heard of anybody in a while that, like, blatantly said that that's what they told.
Yeah, well, the problem is the time we live in. If you said that, it'd be like, which fucking farm?
Right,
Yeah,
but
which
that's
fucking farm, yeah.
that's what I mean, though, that
Yeah.
it was written in the 80s, if not maybe earlier. But so that's another thing where if you're remaking something for a reason, you have to think about how a story... What's up, Toussaint?
Nothing. I'm just thinking about the protein farm from Blade Runner 2049. Like, he went to that farm. Why the fuck did he go to that farm?
I don't know.
I don't know.
And that is another one of those things where it's like you actually have to read the script before you rewrite the script, and not just copy paste.
Yeah.
Really quick before we go to our final ratings,
Yes.
there is something about this film that I also didn't care for.
There's so many things.
I thought
Crack open the crypt.
There were parts of this film that were not terrible, as I've hopefully hit on those a little bit. But at the same time, I'm a little confused about what John Lithgow's character is going for here, of why he brings him back. Like, I get him saying, "Oh, I saw Ellie,"
Why he
and
brings the cat back?
yeah,
because
he
Ellie
sees,
was the first.
Yes,
Yeah.
I get that, but literally, like 5 minutes earlier, he's also explaining about how he did the same thing with his dog, and then they had to fucking murder his dog.
He thought that it was because his dog had a mean streak already before he died.
Okay.
And
I'm not saying
that really
whatever, but-
that the resurrection just amplified that mean streak, and he knew that cat to be kind, and he thought that
Yeah,
it wasn't
okay.
necessarily the properties of the soil, but rather
Okay.
the properties of the animal that were then augmented by that.
That may make sense if he doesn't know the entire story surrounding that place. He literally reads off saying, "All these people left here and did not come back because it's haunted." Like,
It's funny that you're complaining about this for good reason, because this movie does actually cut out something that would only strengthen your case, which is that he, in the original version in the novel, tells a grand tale about a person that somebody clearly did. I mean, I know you saw newspaper clipping, but like he knows of an actual case where he goes on and on about this horrific version of events where basically he knows that a family did this for one of their adult sons, and it was like fucking awful, and the whole town showed up to do like fucking torch and pitchfork that they needed to murder the guy, and that's completely absent from here. And I've always thought of it as he only did it for the cat because of what Toussaint said, as far as the dog did have a mean streak, but also because like animals, I just think he thinks that like are more imperceptible of like personality change, especially a cat, which is so fucking aloof and whatnot, that he really thought that he was only dipping the toe in the pond.
Right.
And I also think it's time heals a lot of things. Like, he hasn't done any of that shit for at least 50 years. So I do think you have a rose-colored look at, like, maybe this can...
Like, maybe I can do this one thing in order to make sure that this little girl that I care about isn't sad without cracking open the entire fucking door. And I'm just like, no, it's either open or closed.
Yeah, I think it makes perfect sense for me because it's and not only that, but he kind of doesn't do it. He tricks, and I kind of feel like there's something interesting about that too as a character, which is like I think that's a almost subconscious admission of guilt, like almost precognition of like, God, I really hope this works, but also like I'm gonna let you do it because
You did a good job.
Yeah,
Take a drag off my cigarette. You did a good
I genuinely
job,
think
Louis.
that's like a distancing effect of like, no, I think this will work. Like, but then it's like, well, why wouldn't you just go do it? You know what I mean? And then for that, so I'm all here for that.
Because if something bad happens, then it's his fault. But he's already the one who's instigating it, but he's still trying to put at least a distance of culpability between him and Lewis and the cat.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I feel like that whole section of the film felt really messy to me.
Yeah. I wanted to see the Wendigo.
So going to final ratings, I overall thought this was a very mediocre film. I I thought for every part of it that I enjoyed, there was one that equally was not as good or even worse. I thought that there were some really solid horror moments throughout here, specifically probably in the middle portion of this film, where I think this film finds its best sort of rhythm. Specifically, the scene where Church the cat has gone downstairs, and the mother, I think it's the mother, not the father, is going after him, and it's a very off-putting moment where you don't really know what's going to happen, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like something terrible. So it's just very, I don't want to say heart-racing, but at the same time, in the theater, I was very interested and almost on the edge of my seat watching this very mundane moment happen, which I think the film did a very good job with. And again, I will say, other than the beeping car, which I agree with Tucson is fucking stupid, that final image I actually think was quite wonderful. This idea of this force taking over now and almost going to perhaps start to consume one by one this, and turn into something that you cannot stop. I find that very interesting, and definitely am very appreciative of it being almost the inverse of what the original source material was. So there are a lot of parts of this that I enjoyed, but at the same time, this is a very sloppy film that could have used a lot of work on the rewrites, and it really just felt like a film that they just wanted to get out there and strike while the iron is hot on the Stephen King name. So it's 2.5 out of 5 for me for Pet Sematary, as I thought this was just okay.
I went to go see this film last night, and I've already pretty much forgotten at least half of it. Within a week, I will have forgotten I have watched this film at all. It is utterly unremarkable. It is boring. It is dumb. I'm going to give it a 1.5 out of 5, only on the principle that I did jump during the jump scares, even though they are very fucking stupid, and I love John Lithgow, and that's pretty much the only sort of curve that I'm willing to grade this film on. Yeah, I would not recommend this.
Yeah, I'm going to echo that and give it a 1.5 out of 5 because there were some shots I liked and there were some moments that I thought was, executed well enough. But ultimately, I just thought this was a failure in adaptation terms. It just completely whiffs on understanding what makes Stephen King's original story scary, but even more so just affecting, and kind of the reason why a story like Pet Sematary stays with you is not because of a scary cat or a dumbwaiter. It's because of the choices the characters make, and the choices the characters make in this movie are just dumb and not informed by irrational thought,
and not even horror movie dumb. It's just regular dumb.
Yeah, and you get the idea that they're only doing this because it's an adaptation, and so it was written somewhere that they did these things. So yeah, overall, I just thought it was largely kind of a failure. I mean, I don't think it's like a horrible movie, but I definitely think it's a very pointless one.
This is the kind of film that I could easily imagine in like a home release with like the director's commentary and Easter eggs and shit like that. It's like, oh yeah, we put an Easter egg. We actually put the script on one of the tables because somebody had to keep on reading the lines over because they kept on forgetting what they had to do. Yeah, that's what I would expect from this film because it's just so brain dead.
Yeah, and one other thing I'll say is that I'm sorry, but I will take the cheesiness of the 80s production over this one because the ultimate climax with Gage running amok as a weirdly undead toddler.
I'm the baby, gotta love me.
Just giggling and cackling in a demonic voice as he's then euthanized by his own father is way more affecting than anything that was in this film.
Yeah.
Okay. If you out there have any thoughts on either this film, the original Pet Sematary, or the Stephen King novel, always feel free to find us either on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, although you don't really share opinions on Instagram, at Film Tank Show, or you can always just send us an email at filmtankshow@gmail.com. This episode and all our other episodes are on our website, filmtankshow.com. Also, they are on iTunes or Stitcher. And also, too, if you could rate / review, very much appreciated, as those are the kind of things that somewhat make a difference.
We love you.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. So, as we chatted about a little bit earlier, I think we're going to talk about Black Swan.
Black Swan.
While we've been doing this episode, I've actually reached out to one of our usual friends who joins us here.
Who is it?
Trying hard. And I thought she would enjoy it, this kind of episode. That's Sam, again.
Yeah.
Sam!
And I think she'll have good opinions on that, too.
She has great opinions.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
But in that film in particular. But
yeah.
Thanks, Tucson, for making it awkward.
I never want to hear you say she has great opinions in that tone again.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that sounds a little inappropriate, but that's fine. Anyways, I know what you meant.
Yeah.
It's totally good. So anyways, we'll be talking about Darren Aronofsky's Black Swan and not be talking about Mother again on our next episode. So, from Nick Cheney,
Hey.
Tucson Egan,
Hey.
and the Pet Sematary,
Hey.
I am Alex Steekman. Thank you very much, as always, for listening to us here at Film Tank. We'll be catching up with you next time.
Hey.